This could be like a little controversial, and again, I don't mean to hurt any religious sentiments when I ask this question. Do you feel Puranas, at the end of the day, it is still like a rendition of some fictional thing that he's.
And if you haven't heard of Guliga, I'll give you a very interesting reference from Kantara.
Okay.
Remember in the climax,
Mhm.
Rishabh Shetty is totally knocked out,
Yes.
and then the imaginary deity, that deity's form comes and
Right.
whispers something into his
Yes.
ear and
Yes.
he gets up.
Yes.
That time he is not possessed by Panjurli, he is possessed by Guliga.
Oh.
Guliga, what does he do? He kills the villain. So symbolically, death is given by Guliga. Oh, and the deity who is related to death is the one who is coming and taking the life of the bad guy.
Kantara like shows that whoever is possessed at the end, the protagonist actually disappears into the forest and not to be seen again and things like that. Do these sort of instances also have ever happened? Hi and welcome to another episode of Expert Talk with Bhavya Desai. And today we are speaking to the author Hari Kumar. He's a horror genre writer and he's written a couple of books which are really popular. But today we spoke to him about Daiva. Now, Daiva is his new book which actually focuses on the dancers who perform the Kola dance. Now, what is the Kola dance? Kola dance is actually from the movie Kantara, where you've seen the protagonist get possessed by a deity and then he performs some miraculous things, and that actually is basically in this book. Now, what's interesting about this conversation is that no matter who you are, whether you are a spiritual person, whether you're a practical person, whether you're a believer in faith, whether you're not, it always presses some notes, some buttons about what the reality is, what's the spiritual realm is, and that's the connection that we've tried to establish, and that's the connection that we've tried to explore. So there are so many times in this conversation that I was getting goosebumps, and there were so many interesting topics and directions that this conversation could have gone. So I hope you really like and enjoy this conversation. If you like our work, then please, of course, hit that like button and also subscribe to our channel, and see you in the next one. So Hari, thank you so much for coming to Expert Talk with Bhavya Desai, and also a very welcome.
Thank you so much.
Of course, for all the viewers, actually, there's a new book of yours which is coming in, which is Daiva. Popularly, of course, पूरा जो मतलब ये book है, it is about the people who do the famous Kantara, of course. So that's what the thing is. But there is so much that I actually want to talk about today, because book, of course, is a very interesting aspect, but there are so many layers in that to peel as well. A little bit of spirituality, a little bit of course, spirits, the realm, thought processes, things like that. So I'm very excited to have that conversation. So if you have anything to say, then please.
Thank you for pronouncing it right. Because wherever I have been to till now,
Right.
everyone has pronounced it as Deva, Dev.
Okay.
So it is Daiva, and thank you for pronouncing it correctly. So Daiva, yes, it has a lot to do with spirits. It has a lot to do with religion as well, and it has a lot to do with the beliefs of the people who adhere to these spirit deities.
Right.
So I think I'm very fortunate that I got an opportunity to write a book on this subject. That's all I'd say, right?
Right. So first up, actually, I just wanted to set the base, and I know that you mentioned that the last literature on something like this, in terms of what we could really read, was almost nearly 130 years back, if I'm not mistaken, right? So can you just take us, what has that journey been from that time to what it is, and how important is it in that respect?
So the thing is, the stories of these Daivas, so they're also known as Bhutas in some parts.
Right.
So we'll come to this topic later. So let's use the term spirit deities.
Okay.
So these deities, these stories, they were orally passed on from one generation to another.
Yes.
Through these folk poems in Tulu language. Okay. So the region is also known as Tulu Nadu.
Right.
Okay. So they were never written down. So it was the efforts of these European writers. There was this Reverend Manner, a German Basel missionary. Then there was A.C. Bernal, an English writer. these were the people who came to, who tried to hear these stories, these folk poems called Pardanas in Tulu, and then they noted it down, and then they translated it into English.
Okay.
Okay, so these were the early efforts to bring these stories to the written world. Okay, because in order to preserve something, you have to write it down at some point, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, it keeps on changing. Even now, it changes.
Yes.
That variability factor, to avoid that, you have to write it down, right? So these were the early writers who took that challenge,
Right.
and obviously they came from a very different background, from a very different perspective. They came at a time when, Reverend Manna, he was a missionary. So naturally his outlook will be very different, right? So when they came to this region and they saw these people worshipping these spirit deities, and since some of them are even called bhutas,
Right.
they automatically translated or interpreted it as devil worship.
Right.
Okay, and that's one of the reasons why that first book, it's called Devil Worship of the Tuluvas.
Okay.
Tuluvas are the Tulu speaking people.
Right.
So it took 130 years for Devil Worship of Tuluvas to become Daiva,
Right.
discovering the extraordinary world of spirit worship. Now the thing is, when somebody writes something, and we know that those guys had the authority, right? So the early scholars, they also tried to follow those footsteps.
Right.
So even they have used the word like devil worshippers or devil dancers. The dancers who perform this Kola, they were called devil dancers. Okay. But then eventually the regional scholars also started, bringing their, because they were from this culture. They were not disconnected.
Right.
Right. So when they started venturing forth, they identified this difference, and they now, though, you don't use the word devil worshippers anymore, at least not in the region, right? So there's a lot of literature in Kannada, even in Tulu, although we don't have a script, an officially recognized script. It's written in Kannada lipi, and but then there is nothing that's available for the outside world.
Understand.
For the outside world, the last big literature came 130 years back.
Understand.
So that way, this book fills a gap.
I understand.
And especially after watching Kantara, a lot of people became very curious.
Absolutely.
Okay, what is this? Are these Puranic spirits? Is this a ghost? So I had a friend. So I was brought up in Delhi. Okay, so every time I have an event in Delhi and I'm invited as a speaker, I make sure that I visit at least the closest of my friends.
Of course.
It was during one of these events when I met a classmate. And he apparently had watched Kantara and he was a huge fan of the film. Okay, and he started asking me questions. What are these? Are these bhutas? Or are they devils? Because I did a Google search and I found that it's a devil worshipping, it's a demon, possession. And he was kind of taking it the wrong way.
Right.
And I also felt, no, I think there is
Right.
a lack of understanding and there's a lack of literature because of which they're interpreting it the wrong.
Right. So it prompted you in that direction.
So, yeah. You can say that.
Okay.
So that's how.
It's interesting what you say, okay, but the thing is, actually, I thought that maybe a little later in the conversation is when I will bring in the little bit of folklore, but then because the conversation went there in terms of what you were saying, like where there is no real script in that respect, where it's been passed on from a generation to generation in terms of poems and things like that. So in that respect, then how much of that do you think gets filtered over a period of time, and then, certain things which are there and which are not there also kind of gets added on?
Yeah.
Does that really happen? Like, have you...
Sorry. It happens a lot. So, for example, so there's this spirit deity which is worshipped in my wife's village.
Okay.
That deity's name is Satyadevate. Okay. And there's another Satyadevate which is worshipped towards the southern part of Tamil Nadu, which is towards Kerala. That deity is also Satyadevate. But they are totally different entities. Okay. there is this popular deity called Panjurli, the one you saw in Kantara. Panjurli, there are different variations of Panjurli. And why this has happened is because, so when a spirit deity reaches a village or the story reaches a village, they have a set of stories related to this spirit deity, right? Now, when the story is conveyed to another audience, by the same group of people, a change in one word or one sentence will change the entire story, right? And then there's also the influence of the Puranic gods. So if the audience is more of a Shaivite audience or a Vaishnavite audience, then that also kind of, so these kind of things bring in variations. So now, for example, a spirit deity in one village, it has arrived at a village, it is there, its story is famous there. And when the same deity is taken to another village, so it is believed that these deities, they latch on to people and can travel from one village to another. I just wanted to clear it because I'm sure you are not understanding why these deities are traveling.
Right.
So that's how they travel. So it's called Beri Pasta Varpuna in Tulu. Beri means the back.
Understood.
So latching onto the back. So for example, you are there and if a spirit deity likes you, okay, so it's assumed that it's an invisible spirit which you cannot see.
Right.
If it likes you, it will latch onto your back and come to your house, hoping for more, whatever you did, seva.
Right.
So, or sometimes it could be the other way around. It could be because of some kind of an anger. You did something wrong and that's why it slashed onto your back. Then it brings paranormal activities to your place. So these are the beliefs of the people, especially in the villages.
Right.
And these are the old beliefs. Nowadays, though, people don't believe that much. But back in the day, that's how it was thought. If there was some paranormal activities in the house, maybe the cattle get sick suddenly out of the blue, then they used to, he went to that place and he came, maybe some kind of spirit came with him. So it could be a negative spirit as well. They are not included as Daivas.
Right.
So now what happens when this spirit deity comes to a new village?
Right.
And it's established there. It brings the old stories with it. But from that day onwards, some new stories start, sprouting from that village, which is very distinct from the old stories.
Got it.
So in the other village, so if it's coming from village A to village B, in village A, there will be a new set of stories from that day onwards.
Right. And then
based on the miracles or whatever karnikas they do. Similarly, yahan pe will be a completely new set of stories. The origin stories might be similar, but these new stories start evolving, and then eventually with the passage of time, when centuries pass, they become completely distinct entities altogether. So that's how variability in folktales, because these are folktales, right? So that's the variability in folktales at play.
But how difficult is it in this case then, when you're doing stuff like this, to verify what's right, what's wrong, what is factual, what is going to...
You can't. Because if I say that, so village A believes that this Daiva has come from Shiva. Okay. So there is this, for example, there is this Daiva called Jarandaya.
Okay.
So Jarandaya, there are a lot of people who feel that it's a royal deity, it's a royal spirit. So one of the spirits who are higher up in the hierarchy. There is a hierarchy as well.
Wow. Okay, didn't know that.
So they are the royal spirits, Rajan Daivas we call. So now this spirit, a lot of people feel that it has something to do with the Jains who ruled, because Jains were the landlords in the past.
Yes.
Right, in that region. So they believe it has something to do with those people. But then there are another set of people who claim that it's Veerabhadra's calm form, Shanta Swarup. So Veerabhadra is Shiva's Gana.
Right.
Bhuta Gana. Right. So there's so how can we say which one is the right one? So in the book, I have maintained that. So I've heard this story from this side, that story from that side. I presented both the sides. Now it's up to the reader what they want to believe, or believe both, if at all they can.
Got you. The reason I ask is, actually it's a very different sort of a question, but that curiosity, where it stems from. And again, when I ask this question, I don't mean to hurt anybody's sentiments, okay? But for the longest time, I've always like basically, and again, see, all of us have studied so much. All of us basically have, we have our own thought processes, we have our own perspectives, and then especially with the newer generation, everybody has like a very different view of what the world is. And in that, then I've always thought about stuff like this, wherein, how is it that would you call the verification of a lot of the things that really happened in terms of mythology as well, whether it's Mahabharata, whether it's Ramayana, whether it is Jesus, whether it is what is there any way to even verify any of these things? I'm sure they must have happened, but how do you verify?
You verify with a scientific approach, if you can.
Okay.
But see, now this is a very tricky question and very controversial question. You put me in a spot. Because I always maintain, see, I have my own set of beliefs.
Yes.
I've been brought up with the stories of all these Indian gods, Puranic gods, right? Now, if I go ahead and call them as part of, they are mythological figures, then it will hurt a set of people who believe that it is Puranic Itihasa.
Got it.
Right. At the same time, if I call them Puranic Itihasa, then there will be a set of people who will say, no, it's part of Indian mythology.
Right.
So how can we prove whether Shiva or Vishnu existed? See, that's why it's called faith, right? You take a leap of faith.
Absolutely.
Scientifically, again, there are, you must have heard of finding Jesus's body, the Holy Grail and everything.
Right.
There are expeditions happening, but how much have they found out? We don't know. Like even Ram Setu was part of a controversy.
Yes.
So if things can be found out, well and good. But have we? I don't think so.
Yeah, that's exactly where I also, because there's a very interesting question that I'd actually asked someone. So so we are Vaishnavas, Gujarati, and again, as I said, I don't mean to hurt anybody's sentiments. I'm also a believer in faith. I believe that there's a divine power for sure. Right. Yeah, what shape or form we don't know, but there is definitely a divine power. I had actually asked a very similar sort of a question. I was like, when, they have this pravachan, right? Like we have in Gujaratis, they have this kind of a Bhagavad Gita, which goes on like a Bhagavad Saptah, it's called, where they read 7 days.
Very much familiar.
Perfect. Okay. So in one of the bigger priests had come home, we had kept a function like that. It's very interesting. And I was really sitting every day to listen to what exactly happens. And I asked him that question. I was like, okay, you know what? It's great. I really understand what you're saying. And there are some great teachings here. How do I know that this is true? So he came up with a very practical answer, which kind of answered it, but yet at the same time left a lot of question marks.
Okay.
So he just asked me a simple question. He's like, do you know who your father is? I was like, yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah. He's like, do you know who your grandfather is? I was like, yes. He's like, do you know who your grandfather's grandfather is? I was like, yes.
You can recollect up till 4th generation?
Yes. And he's like, but do you know who was before that? I was like, no. He's like, okay, before that? No. He's like,
but how do you... doesn't mean that they don't exist.
Yeah. So he's like, how do you know that they existed? So I'm like, of course, my forefathers have told me. It's grandfather's grandfather. That's what they said. And he's like, that's exactly how it is.
Right.
Yeah, and I never thought of it as such a practical level example, because 5 generations, 6 generations back, there's nothing. I don't know who were the forefathers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm very sure that stuff like this must have happened, but I don't really know how do you verify it and how much of it is true in that level of magnitude.
And how much of the fantastical elements are true.
Right.
And how much has changed over the course of time.
Yes. Like MDA जैसे बोलते हैं. हर एक generation में you add
a few things. Right?
Yes.
Not just generations, geographical regions. Okay, so I'll bring a very interesting story here, which is part of Daiva. So you all know Yamdev, right?
Right.
Okay. Have you heard of Guliga?
No.
Oh, that's the difference. In the north, who's the god of death? For the
Yamraj.
Yamraj.
Right.
So in south, there's this famous story, and the story is pretty much from our Puranas. It's the story of Markandeya.
Okay.
Markandeya was supposed to die at the age of 16. Okay. And but he was a big Shiva Bhakta.
Okay.
So, at the time when he turns 16, Yamraj sends his Dut, the messenger. But this boy doesn't
want to go.
Yeah. So now, and the Dut is powerless. So he goes back to Yamlok and it informs Yamraj that this boy is very powerful, I can't do anything, you only go there. So Yamraj himself descends upon earth with his lasso. Okay? And not the Wonder Woman wala. So,
Yes.
with the lasso of death,
Right.
and he tries to take this boy, Markandeya's soul. But there's a Shivalinga that he had been worshipping for the last 16 years. So he grabs the Shivalinga,
Right.
and Shiva appears. And he's so angry at Yama that he
He's trying to take him away.
kills Yama.
Oh.
Now this is where you may not. This might be something new for you.
Right.
He kills the god of death. Okay. Even I was very surprised after hearing the story. And then what happens is that there is no death on earth. And suddenly people now, because death is a form of punishment, when people become sinners, they become filled with pride and everybody is after money, which is like what we are these days. But at least we know there is death. But there is no death. So now once again Indra and his gang is like, oh God, what do we do? People are getting, have they become immortal? Now they will replace us. They go to Shiva. And Shiva, what he does is, he presses his thumb on the earth, and then from there, a very scary looking deity sprouts. And this is Guliga.
Okay.
And then Guliga takes care of death. Now, interestingly, Guliga is also considered to be part of Ashtanaga and all those. That's a different topic altogether. Let's not go into that. But Guliga is considered somebody related to death. And Guliga is one of the Daivas, very powerful Daivas, who is worshipped in the Tulu region. And if you haven't heard of Guliga, I'll give you a very interesting reference from Kantara.
Okay.
Remember in the climax, Rishabh Shetty is totally knocked out?
Yes.
And then the imaginary deity, that deity's form comes and whispers something into his ear and he gets up.
Yes.
That time he is not possessed by Panjurli, he is possessed by Guliga.
Oh.
And Guliga, what does he do?
He kills that tall guy.
So what is that? Not just the tall guy, the villain itself. No?
Yeah, but before that, the tall guy, I think he's knocked out when,
he kills the villain. So symbolically, death is given by Guliga. Which is a very beautiful way of writing a story.
Right.
And this is something that a normal person may never understand.
Yeah, I didn't know. I thought it was the same deity.
So, but that's most of the people wouldn't even know that it's a different deity.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
So, and the deity who is related to death is the one who is coming and taking the life of the bad guy.
So basically the narrative is like in the beginning he's like the more happy soul in terms of the deity in him.
Happy soul, but that's a dharma daiva.
Right.
It's a dharma daiva.
And then when he's knocked out, then the
ferocious one comes in, and then he takes the life of the bad guy.
Right.
Which is very interesting.
Yeah.
If you look at it that way.
Yes.
At least from a screenwriter's perspective or a filmmaker's perspective, it's brilliant.
And of course, then you add to it the way it's being shot.
Those are different things. But coming back to your question, see, the Puranic stories or mythological story, even mythology, I don't know why people take it in the wrong sense. Mytho means story. That's all. It doesn't mean it's fiction.
Right.
It's only when it's mythological fiction, then it becomes fiction.
Right.
Otherwise, mythology is not a bad thing at all.
Right.
That, people take offense. No, it's not. I think we should clear that anyway, coming back to this thing. So, even the mythology you have heard, it's very different from the mythology I got to know while doing this research.
Right.
And there's a story that even a lot of people in Kerala have also might have heard.
Okay.
Yeah. So, that's what it is. The geography में इतना difference आ गया है. In one part of the country, this is not known. In another part, it's not. Like similarly, Ayyappan. Ayyappa is again considered a deity who is born out of Hari and Hara, Shiva and Vishnu. That's again maybe it's an assimilation. I don't know. I'm not going to go into that direction.
Hmm.
But how many people outside the South Belt have heard of Ayyappa? Nobody.
Got it.
I mean, not nobody, but obviously.
Yeah. I think Ayyappa is still a very popular form
Because
where.
now it's popular because of your social media and YouTube, you know.
Right.
Earlier when I was growing up, you know, when I used to read this Chanda Mama and Champak, we only relied on these magazines. We didn't have internet.
Right.
So I grew up in Delhi. Nobody knew Ayyappa. But we knew it because we came from Kerala. So
I understand. Right.
even in Tulu region also Ayyappa is known. But
Right.
थोड़ा ऊपर जाओगे तो नहीं है Ayyappa कोई.
Got your point. You know, it's interesting. One of the things that you actually mentioned, and also like it's again a very practical question. You know, what really is spirit realm? And I mean, is there really a spirit realm? Because for now, I'm sure. See, from where you are sitting, where you've actually written this book, and obviously you've researched from that perspective. I'm coming from a perspective where I'm a very practical person. You know, wherein I certain thought processes basically give me a very curious sort of a direction to what I really want to understand about because there's so many things which you can't explain.
Right.
You know, so what really is a spirit realm? And does it even really exist? I mean,
so there is no definite answer.
Okay.
So in a very modern urban fashion, we can say that there is this reality, physical reality where we are here. I am manifesting in this form, you are manifesting in this form. And whatever we see, it's all physical, it's all tangible. Right? हम छू सकते हैं, we can touch it.
Right.
And even if we don't touch it, it's there, like air, it's there. Right? Then there is another dimension which exists all around, but we cannot perceive it with our senses. With our 5 sense organs, we cannot perceive it. This is the most common understanding or perception of the spirit world or a spirit realm.
Okay.
But that's because of the kind of films we have watched, whether it's Hollywood or Hollywood that has inspired Bollywood or South Indian film industry, I don't know. In general, or maybe the literature that we have read, that's the reason why we are influenced to think that way. And even if you look at all the spiritual, if you go to somebody and, you know, more nowadays, if you go to someone and ask, are you religious? They'll say, no, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. What is spiritual? Again, it's this definition that comes out, that there is this physical manifestation and there is this spirit realm or an illusion, you know, beyond which we have to go so that we can attain moksha or nirvana or whatever, which comes slow, which indirectly comes from the Advaitic thoughts or the Advaitic जो आपका school of thought है, वहाँ से आता है कि the world is an illusion.
Okay.
ठीक है, and everything beyond is the reality.
Understood.
Right, the ultimate reality is beyond. Everything is energy. Blah blah blah. These things. See, again, I'm not negating. I'm not saying it's not true. We don't know exactly. To be honest, right? Now, when I was researching for this book, so there's also your spirit dimension in Stranger Things. Upside down.
Yes,
that's also a spirit dimension.
Parallel
Not a spirit dimension, but that's an upside down dimension.
Yeah.
Again, it might have been born out of a crazy writer's escapist thoughts. See, even Advaitha could have been come out of that. We don't know, right? We can think wherever our mind takes us to. We can even think beyond that, but then we cannot give you that ultimate answer, right? So now, when I was there in this region, I was asking people. So usually there's an invocation in which you call the spirit deity from the Akasha to the body of the dancer or the artist. So that way, if you look at it, I mean, again, then the spirit deity is supposed to exist all around, or the spirit world is supposed to exist in, I mean, simultaneously with our world. There was another interesting thing which I heard from somebody, and I've heard this from a lot of people as well, that there are these restless spirits who are all around us, but we cannot perceive them. And even there's even if you I think it's mentioned in the Brihad Samhita that all the omens, what is omens? Shakun, Apshakun, right?
Right.
all the upshakuns or the shakuns, they are influenced by these spirits.
Okay.
Okay, so if a crow dives in front of you from the left, I think it's considered very bad, and if it's a crow that's diving from the right, it's considered to be good. I may be mistaken, idhar udhar ho gaya hoga, but
Right.
whatever it is,
That's the idea. Huh?
that's the idea, and this is being done by some spirit beings, and those are not these daivas,
Of course.
but these are these spirits which are existing all around us, and some of them can be very, very sadistic. They can be like when two people if they collide and they knock their heads, then these spirits become very happy. So when during the cock fights, the cock bites into the sees blood, they become very happy. So it is believed that to protect when these kind of beings are all around us, if they are at all, then there should be somebody to protect us from them, right? And your big time gods are like your PMs and presidents. They cannot come down to each and every house.
Right.
So there you have a hierarchy. You've got a spirit who looks after the house, which is the family deity.
Wow.
Then you have a spirit that looks after, that's called an Illada Daiva. Illa means house.
Okay.
Okay. The word can differ from the north and south.
Right.
And as you move, the next is the Jaga. Jaga means jagah hai.
Okay.
I mean, the rough translation would be a jagah.
Place.
Place. 4 or 5 houses or 6 houses together. That's the Jaga. That's this particular perimeter. That region, it comes under Jagada Daiva or Bhuta. And then the next would be something like a Magane, Sima, and then further. That's the kind of then that's a hierarchy as well.
Okay.
Okay, so you have these Daivas who protect each part of your life.
Wow.
And then you have your Puranic gods, your Shivas and Parvatis and your Vishnu. They are also there.
So then that's the next level, is the rest. So it's very interesting the way this hierarchy comes up.
Right.
Right. And whatever, see, again, if you want to question, you can question a little. But if it gives hope to somebody, why should it? Again, it's a matter of faith.
Yes. It's on belief as well. Right?
Okay.
At the end of the day.
At the end of and again, coming back to that question about spiritual reality. So there is this another interesting theory which says that whatever is happening here is just a manifestation of the actual reality. Somewhere else.
So this is probably a dream.
Understood.
Right.
It's a very Inception sort of a
A thing. Yeah.
Ah.
Again, when it comes to Dvaitha, the concepts kind of differ. So in Advaitha, everything is Maya. Shankaracharya says everything is Maya. You and me, this existence is Maya. We have to come out of this shell and get out of this samsara chakra to actually attain reality, or whatever you want to call it. Dvaitha, Madhvacharya takes a different route. He says that this dream, although it's well within Maya, but it's real because it is happening.
Exactly, yeah.
Which I feel is a very practical way to, to look
elucidate,
at Obviously, uske baad, there are a lot of other schools of thoughts which are derived from a blend of these two.
Right, yeah.
But I think Dvaitha, this is what it is. This dream, if it is at all a dream,
right,
then the real person, the Purusha or whatever you want to call it, the Supreme Being or whatever, that person's dream, we are existing as realities.
Right.
Which again, then that means this is real.
Yeah, it has, I mean, yeah, as you said, it's actually...
We might be spirits in somebody else's world.
Yes, possible. Because it's also because that's a very practical approach, as you say as well. Like, for example, when I'm touching something, when I'm touching myself,
exactly,
I feel it, right?
You feel it.
Unlike what you possibly see in a dream.
But the thing is, in the dream, see, that's exactly what is Madhvacharya's point. In the dream, so if you're dreaming about yourself,
right,
okay, and you have me, both of us are talking in your dream.
Yes.
Okay. In the dream, we might even shake our hands or whatever, but you might not feel it here. But that doesn't mean that in the dream they didn't shake the hands, that they didn't feel it. Now it's it's a kind of थोड़ा उसमें जाता है circle में, but that's what. So again, for us, that's dream, that's non-existent, that's
Right.
Maya.
Right.
We are saying we are real.
Got your point.
But for those two entities or those two characters within your
That
dream,
could
that
be,
is the reality.
Right.
It's very
So meaning it's different
It's
rendition.
Inception, in a way.
Yeah, it is, right? Yeah, because it's a very similar sort
Yeah.
of a situation.
Yeah.
So meaning in short, it's like a different rendition of what people kind of feel in terms of different versions, but they all of those point towards के मतलब यही spirit realm हो सकता है, wherein there are like
It could
these.
be a spirit realm, it could be, again, it could be a parallel realm as well. Probably, so this is again a very vague theory.
Hmm.
Probably what we consider spirit realm could be our mirror images.
Hmm.
It could be like, I mean, if you want to look at it, the Tesseract in Interstellar.
Right. Hmm. Yes.
If you look at that last scene, you're existing at every other second or
Yes.
maybe even more.
Hmm.
So that doesn't, if that at all is real, then that means every other thing is real.
Hmm.
But for I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with the movie, and I'm
Of
sure
course.
that your audience is also familiar. But those who are not familiar, there's a character called Murph,
Right.
the girl
Hmm.
who grows up to be the scientist.
Yes, of course.
So when she was a little girl, she thinks that this entity that is creating this disturbance in a room is a ghost.
Yes, exactly. Right.
But in the end, she realizes
It's the future.
it's the
or
future
the past.
or the real person from the future or past
Future
who's
past.
trying to
Huh.
make connect. So yeah.
Right.
So there, even in the movie called Others, if you have watched it, Others,
No, I
there's
haven't.
a very
Oh
similar
yes,
thing.
Nicole Kidman.
Nicole Kidman.
Yes.
In
Oh
the
yes.
end,
What a
see,
movie.
There again, she thinks it's ghosts, it's spirits.
Amazing
But in
movie.
the end, she realizes she is the whatever way you want to put it.
Right.
So again, see,
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I mean that's
it's
what
a
because
perspective that we should
True.
not rule out if at all we are interested. Otherwise, just rule everything out and live a simple life. Enjoy your life. If this is the only life you've got, enjoy it.
understand. Right. You know, very interesting thing that you spoke about, and you mentioned this in the book as well. So I actually wanted to touch upon this, which is a continuation of what you're saying in terms of when the deity travels from one village to the other. You know, you say that there is voluntary and involuntary possessions, right? So can you break down for us what is a voluntary and involuntary possession and what happens in either of those avenues?
So involuntary possession is what you see in your movies.
Okay.
Even, I mean, obviously movies are inspired from real life incidents. So there you don't have control. So the idea is that there's a spirit, I mean, a bad spirit, or maybe the spirit of a departed person that is still restlessly wandering, or a soul, or an atma, which latches onto you and possesses you. In Hindi, we call it parakaya praveshan.
Okay.
Parakaya is a different body.
Right. Praveshan is coming in the body. Right.
So the spirit, it enters the body and possesses it, and then it makes it do things. And the person is not in control of the body. The original person. So if you are the person, for example,
Right.
X is a spirit, and the X comes and possesses you, then
Understood.
you become X. And then you start doing a lot of crazy things. And you may even create havoc. And then you have to be exorcised, or whatever has to be done according to the religious beliefs of this thing. So that is involuntary possession. Voluntary possession is when you invoke a spirit deity. I'm not talking of a spirit, I'm talking of a spirit deity. There's a difference. There's a respect involved. The spirit deity, like I said, the invocation is come from the Akasha to this Manamancha or whatever it is. I mean, in Tulu they do the invocation. I am not allowed to do that, so I won't do that. Who are the rightful people, they should be doing it. But as an example, I'm just
Understood.
telling you that from the Akasha they invite the spirit to the place of worship, and from the place of worship to the body of the man. And then once it enters the body, he becomes possessed. And then they perform the dance and perform miraculous feats, and they even give Prophecies like an oracle, solve disputes.
Hmm.
Then they take the bhoga, the food offerings. Then they give prasada, and then they depart.
Understand. But that, again, like when I ask this question next, I of course don't mean to hurt anybody's sentiments, neither do I actually question any belief in that respect. But when is it possible that like a person who's actually getting possessed voluntarily, okay, what is that defining line wherein you know whether it's actually happening or whether it's more lot of role play, and if it's
There is no way to tell. No?
okay.
See, again, it's a matter of faith.
Hmm.
Now, if you look at now, I'm talking about possession in general.
Okay.
Now, this includes involuntary possession.
Okay.
To make it easier for people to understand, let me just take a reference from Bhul Bhulaiya.
Okay. Yes.
Bhul
1, 2,
Bhulaiya. 111.
1. Okay.
No comments. So in Bhul Bhulaiya, what they have done is they have explained the paranormal in a psychological way,
Right.
which is based on the idea that, which is a scientifically accepted idea that possession, all these demonic possessions, what
Right.
we see in people, whether in the villages or in the West or whatever, it's basically a kind of a dissociation.
Right.
Okay. So a person splits into another personality, and when they split into that personality, they
MPD, like MPD.
MPD is multiple person. Yeah, it's the same thing. That's a dissociative disorder.
Right.
So it's called split personality, multiple personality disorder, whatever. So it depends on what is it called in the this thing, the manual, fifth. Anyway.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. So because earlier it was called split personality, now it's called multiple personality. There's now the actual name is DID.
Okay.
Dissociative identity disorder.
Disorder. Okay.
Like a tongue twister it is. So DID, what happens is that the person completely disconnects from his or her own personality.
Right.
They become somebody else. And when they become somebody else, if it's for a duration of like a day or an hour, they won't remember anything that they did. Okay. So for example, let's take Bhul Bhulaiya as example. When Avni, that is Vidya Balan's character, becomes Manjulika,
Right.
what Manjulika does, Avni doesn't remember.
Yes.
Avni feels like there was no time slip. She was here.
It's the next one.
It's the next moment. Okay. That half an hour or 1 hour of possession, she doesn't remember. Okay. Same case with Manjulika. We never look at that perspective. Manjulika bhi, when she becomes Manjulika, there's a connect, and when she is disconnected and when she comes back again, life continues from there. But she won't remember anything about Avni.
Right.
But in the movies, they show these very weird things that, no, I'm going to destroy this body and everything, you know.
Right.
I don't know if that happens like that, but at least whatever I have heard, it doesn't really happen like that.
Okay.
The other personality is also not aware that
This has happened.
yeah, this is not that person's body.
Understand.
Okay. So again, not the right person to talk about it, but this is my understanding.
No, but in cases like this, where you're saying if possessions are there, whether voluntary or involuntary, say for example now continuing from where involuntary, if you're saying, then some of these
So even in involuntary, like in Kola dancers,
right.
I tried to ask one of the Kola performances after the performance, while the artist was packing his stuff. I asked him, it was a beautiful performance, and I asked him, do you remember anything? And he said, no, I don't. So then I asked him, when was the moment because I was very curious.
Of course.
I asked him, so what was the moment when when you got possessed, and how long did it last? He just gave me a very simple answer, which is in the book also, that it's like when you press a button on the remote, the channel changes.
Which is
Okay. You won't ever see that moment when that change happened, but you will see the transition. That was the answer. I kept thinking about it all night. Now, whether it was his original answer or if it was something which he heard from somebody, I don't know. But this is what he's told me, and it was very modern as well. It was not an outdated explanation.
Yeah.
He knew that I was from the city, and this was a very remote village. But it was very interesting. That thing kept me thinking already. Yeah, right. And even that, this kind of things happens to normal people as well. I mean, people like us in the city. You know, there are times when you have time slips, especially when you're driving.
Yes.
You forget, when did I reach here?
Sometimes, yeah. When you're pondering on a thought, it does happen. Yes.
So the whole spectrum, it's a spectrum from 0 to. But yeah, this is what I have understood.
But you know, when you say like about these possessions, now in fictional movies and XYZ and all of these things, which is not the reference that I really want to take, because that's not what where it comes from. They show that a lot of the people get like ulterior powers. They're more stronger than who they are, where they are able to move objects, which I think is bending reality.
Right.
But does that really happen? Have you like seen?
So I'll talk about two things. One is that involuntary part. So this is something that I've heard from some relative, which happened in my house long back. I think at least 3 or 4 generations back. At least 3 generations back.
Wow.
So there was this woman who used to, was a relative of my grandmother, and as she was getting older, she started getting possessed. At least that's what was believed, and so she would lift. I mean, she was old. She was like in her 70s or something, and she would lift we had settees back in the day.
Right.
She would lift settees like that. How did she get that power? Obviously, the strength is there in your body, but something is pushing you. So, if A, it's a spirit which has some powers, or B, it's some chemical in your brain.
Invokes something in your body to do that.
Yeah. So even if you want to look at it that way, the people in your gyms, when they're lifting weights, you need some tonic to get that. It's there in your body, but you need some external factors to get that thing. So that could be a very rational explanation for this. But the popular explanation is that she was possessed by a spirit of a local, I don't know, what was that? So there was this guy who used to, there was a manual laborer or something. It was his spirit which was roaming around that had possessed him. So that's why she had so much of physical power. And this woman, she would even try to, this Kerala I'm talking about, she would climb up coconut trees and all. So,
wow. That's
yeah,
70,
this is
that's
everything I've heard. We were like, we were not even born. My parents were not born at that time. But yeah.
No, but even if it's generational, then still, even if it's like 50% true, then some of it at least has to be true.
Some of it, yeah. Yes. Somebody has witnessed it.
Exactly.
Right. And I don't think that everybody would lie. And there may be variations of what they did,
which is fine.
Yeah, but these were the common things that I've heard. That she used to climb this. Then there was another interesting incident which my spouse recollected, which she has witnessed in her village, which is in Karkala, Tulunadu.
Okay.
Karnataka. So there was this lady, and so there are different accents of Tulu.
Okay.
There is a common Tulu. There is the caste-based Tulu and all those things, which are little different. There's
some variations.
Yeah, variations. There might be some usage of influence of Sanskrit in some dialects. Okay, there might be the influence of some other Kannada in some this thing. Malayalam ka thoda sa influence towards the southern part of because it's the border area. So there was this woman who would come. And she used to speak in a very different accent because that was her normal accent. And I think during the time of some religious festivals, and she'd start speaking in a very old, archaic form of Brahmin Tulu.
Wow.
And it was very interesting. I mean, completely different. Even the normal, I mean, the modern people who speak,
wouldn't understand.
They wouldn't understand. Very archaic. A lot of Sanskrit coming, and she is somebody who was not even gone to school, but she would speak. And the next day, when they'd ask her, "How did you speak so much of Sanskrit?" "Huh? I never spoke Sanskrit. When did I speak Sanskrit?" So these kind of incidents, I mean, yeah, I think it happens. How do we explain it? We either take the rational side or we take the supernatural
Right.
or paranormal explanations.
But it's interesting. But in cases like, for example, where you say that when you spoke to the Kola dancer, so for firstly, I mean, if you can just like give an idea of what Kola dance is for someone who's not read the book yet. I mean, I know what Kola dance is, but if you can just give them an idea that what.
So, Kola, the word actually means embellishment. It's the whole get up, the appearance, that's the Kola.
Right.
Then now it's kind of interchangeably used for the dance.
Okay.
And it's not just a dance, it's a lot more. Okay, but to simplify things, there is a dance involved in which there's this artist or a dancer from a particular community who invokes and gets the spirit deity in his body, and then he dances. And during the dance, they can actually do a lot of incredible things, which you sometimes it's very difficult. I mean, it's so there was this Kola where this spirit dancer, this Kola artist, he had a steel plate in his hand and he was hitting it on his head, and the plate completely went backwards, and it was very scary. But at the same time, it kind of gave me goosebumps. And it's very common. I mean, it's common as in the people who go to Kolas, for them it might actually be common in a lot of Kolas. But then for somebody who is watching it for the first time, it really gives you a scare. But then they don't even realize it. And then they'll keep spinning, and and they also narrate this Pardana, this folk, the story of the Daiva who's being invoked. So, and they remember it from start to finish. And nothing was written down in the past. Now, still it's written down. There are efforts to write it down, but they remember everything. They'll sing the song, and so they also put on this makeup, this color. They color their face.
Yeah.
Depending on the type of Daiva, the color may vary. It could be yellow. It could be black.
So, but that happens once the deity has been invoked.
Yes.
And so then the whole.
So the scholars and the practitioners of the region, they have kind of found, they have kind of created this category of 16 steps.
Okay.
It's called Padanaje Kattu Katle. And although this varies, I mean, when you go from one
region to region, right.
From Daiva to Daiva, region to region. But broadly, it's बहुत ही generic way में it's categorized into 16 steps. So, अब detail में तो मैंने book में लिखा हुआ है. So, the first step will be when the person, is not a Daiva yet. He'll come forward. He'll take the initial offerings, whatever is given. Then he's given the offering of oil. That oil is used to take a ceremony. It's a ceremonious bath, you can say. And after that, they slowly start singing the Pardanas or the folk poems, and then they start invoking, and they also start applying the makeup. Makeup is not the right word, but then that's the best way I can actually. So once the varnika and that's the colors and all is applied on the face, they wear the attire of the Daiva. If it's a female, then it could be a sari. If it's a male, it could be a simple upar ka cloth and niche cloth. If it's androgynous, then its upper body is different, the lower body is different. The different types of Daivas are there. Sometimes there is no attire at all. It's a very simple this thing. So that is when you think that the possession has started. At least that's what I have felt. but we don't know exactly at which moment it has happened. It's only something that they would know.
Understand.
We can only experience, we can only have a second-hand experience.
True.
And then the thing is, the people who believe in it, when that is also, when they know that the people who have gathered have belief in the Daiva, then it actually helps them also to sincerely invoke the deities. That's the common belief.
Understand.
Then they do these dances, they perform these miraculous feats. So there is this, so you have these mashals, and they light it up. They bring it close to their chest and your face and everything, which is not a normal thing to do for an ordinary man like you and me.
Right.
Ordinary in the sense,
Yeah. Under ordinary circumstances,
you
nahi hoga.
can't even think of that. I can't think of that. Okay, and they bring it very close to the chest or the chin, and it's very scary. And I've even heard, I've not seen this, but I've heard from somebody that they might even try to bring it closer to the tent, because this happens under a tent, under a chappar.
Okay.
That's what we call it in Hindi. In Kannada, it's called chappara. And so they even bring it closer to the chappara, but nothing happens. It doesn't catch fire. And in some kolas, though, especially towards the southern part, they have this huge fire. They jump into the fire. All these things happen. And even further south in Kerala, you have Kola, you have Agni Praveshanam, which is this only. And further south, there is Teyyam. Teyyam again is a different form of, it's the Malayali form. See, the word Daiva becomes Daya, becomes Teyyam. Okay.
But in none of these cases, whoever's possessed comes out with any harm to themselves.
No.
Even when they're
That's
going
what
in
we
the...
have. That's even when you're there, you're like, how are they doing this?
Yeah,
So either it's they're well trained, and maybe there are things that we don't understand.
How can you train yourself against fire?
I don't know. Trained as in they've observed their ancestors doing.
No, what I mean is like nothing happens to your body. There's no level of training
I
that
don't
can
know.
be done.
I can't explain that.
Yeah.
Even if there is an explanation, I can't explain that. Because this is happening. You don't have to believe me. You can just do a Google search and you'll find this. You just Google Agni Praveshanam or Kola. Kola is Ottekola. You'll find it. Vishnumurti's Kola. It's scary. If you look at the cover itself, this is Mokambi Guliga, and that's the fire I'm talking about. See, they jump into it. They jump. They jump face first. I don't know. So one interesting thing. So even for Daiva, again, when I started Daiva, I had a lot of issues. Emotionally, I was going through a very tough time. I've mentioned in the book why. I'm not going to talk about it here, but we lost a few people in our lives, and emotionally we were devastated. Physically, I had a lot of issues, and I was even bedridden for almost a month, and I didn't know if I had the capability to write something like this. I could write, but for the research, for to spend 2 months in that region, will I be able to do that? I had no idea. And but I took that leap of faith. I went there for the research, and again there I was not finding the right people. The people I tried to contact, they were not responding, and the kind of people who appear on television, the regional people, not national television or anything, the scholars, the experts, I was not getting the right people at all. And the people I contacted, they were either busy or maybe they were not interested. I don't know. I was very disappointed, and I was like, I don't think I'll be able to write this book. This book cannot be based on this Angrez's version.
Of course.
With due respect, it's not. Hadn't he written it something like that, I wouldn't be able to, base this book on that. So, with due respect. But then, something happened. I still remember my wife told me, you just light a lamp here, you start your journey from this Daiva in my house, let's see where it takes you. And it was Satya Devate, which I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast.
Right.
I went there, lit a lamp, prayed to the Daiva, and I was like, this is not the Chamundi, okay, this is Satya Devate. This is one inside the house. Chamundi is for the place. So, And then suddenly I get a call from a completely unknown person. I heard that you were documenting something on Daiva, and I would like to help you. If you need any help, I'll let me know. Similarly, there was another incident which is very interesting, I'd say, and maybe it's just pure coincidence. But there was this practitioner, somebody who practices this Daiva Radhane, and a mediator. There is a mediator in Daiva Radhane, and this mediator was in a Kola, and the spirit deity, I mean, the dancer who was possessed by the spirit deity, holds his hand and he says this. He tells this mediator that somebody from a faraway land is coming looking for you. And the same night, I didn't know this person at all. And the same night, I meet somebody in another place, which is like 30 kilometers from where this Kola was happening. And I tell this person, I know the person is a very well-known person there. I tell him that, I'm documenting spirit worship of the Tulu region. I need some experts to interview. I want to talk to them. So I said, I know somebody who's from your age group and you will be able to mingle well, because the other people who had contacted were very old. Even you have to understand that.
Yes.
And not one generation's gap, 3 or 4 generations. So it would be better if you talk to him. At least you will be able to talk at a similar level.
Yes.
And then he said, let me try. I'll try to get his number. I went back to the hotel room where I was staying that night. And roughly at the same time, this mediator also comes home. He gets this message on his phone that there's this writer from Pune is coming and he wants to get in touch with you. So then when I visited him, he said, yeah, okay, fine, I'd love to meet. When I visited him, he actually mentioned this. That the artist who was possessed, he took my hand and he told me that somebody from a faraway land is coming looking for you. You are going to, whatever he had said. So I also got goosebumps. Okay, fine.
Yeah, I'm getting them now.
Maybe there is something which is connecting us. Maybe there are spirits which are influencing every action and reaction. See, it's not just me writing this book. It's about somebody who is going to help me. And then this person actually took me to a lot of halls he was officiating. And that actually helped me to come closer and get a very closer look at this whole procession or the progression of the rituals. So maybe there is something. And I spent 2 months there. I was going to one village and then another village. I was sleeping. Sometimes, you were sleeping on the floor even. Okay, at some unknown person's house. No back pain, nothing. All the physical ailments which I had like 2 months back, which kept me, bound at home, nothing at all. Now, again, maybe I was very motivated. Or maybe there was something else that was looking after me. So my personal belief is that something was, and it was the Daivas who were looking after me. Fine.
So, Hari, very interesting question. One about like the Kola dancers. You mentioned that, of course, when the deity comes in, they are able to perform a lot of interesting things and stuff like that. And of course, Kantara like shows that whoever is possessed at the end, the protagonist actually disappears into the forest and not to be seen again and things like that. Do these sort of instances also have ever happened?
So that is called, so he vanishes into Maya.
Okay.
It's the actual way of explaining, that's a term used.
Okay.
And basically the thing is, he vanishes. And I have heard from other people that this used to happen in the past. That dancers have vanished at the peak of their performances. Now again, these are things that they have heard from somebody, some elder, who must have heard from some other elder. So now again, even that Kantara is not from the modern period, it's set in the past. Right. So whether it has happened now or not, we don't know. But this is what I have heard.
Okay.
And it is taken as, like I said, it's a belief. It's so they believe in what is being passed. It could also be symbolic.
In a sense,
It's very controversial because at some point you are So symbolic in the sense, from a modern perspective,
Hmm.
if you are kind of blending into a different deity, into a different
Hmm.
reality.
Hmm.
So you are kind of dissociating from your real personality,
Hmm.
and that real personality kind of vanishes into Maya.
Okay.
That's a symbolic way of looking at it.
Hmm.
But whether it has happened in real or not is something, I mean, I have not seen it or I have not witnessed it, but there are people who say that this has happened in the past, or
Understand.
they have heard it from their grandparents, things like that.
Right.
And in the olden days, you didn't have the luxury of so much technology or anything. Kolas used to happen in kandas. Kandas are the forests
Right.
or fields. Okay. It used to be dark. We don't know. I mean, maybe they have vanished. Who knows?
Now you said that in that shape or form when they are doing this thing, when they're performing the Kola and they actually settle disputes and stuff like that. So if stuff like this happens, is that binding? Do people really follow it? Like say for example, if it's a land dispute.
So I'll I'll recollect something. Something that happened at a Kola. So there was this. So it was a Kola of the, I think, it's Kallurti's Kola. Yeah, it was, and we had a Darshana Patri. It was not the artist. It was not the possessed artist. It was a Darshana Patri, if I recollect correctly, who was being asked these questions, and a lot of people had come. Some were asking personal questions. Yeah, why is my son getting these illnesses? Or why is my daughter not clearing an exam? Okay, and so there was this one particular group, a group of the villages, who had come forward and said, "Ki." So it was a personal property, okay, and a private property. A sthana was there. Sthana is where the Daiva was venerated.
Okay.
And there was this huge tree, and there was no road or anything. It was a kacha ground.
Got it.
And the Kola was also happening there. So it was south of Mangalore. So there was this huge Ashwatha. Ashwatha is people ka ped,
Okay.
people tree, and Ashwath कहते हैं उसको शायद हिंदी में भी. So one set of villagers, they came forward. They said कि there's a dispute, and we feel that we need a road here because one of our most of us live towards this part of the village, and there is no direct access to the road.
Right.
And every time we have to come here, we have to pass this rocky ground. Okay. And again, it was a private property. I mean, it was the property of the sthana,
Right.
or who owns the region, area. And the other party, they were like, no, we can't cut down the tree. It's an Ashwatha tree. It's a people ka ped. We can't cut it down. It's a huge tree.
Right.
Okay. We were there. We were sitting there, and we were listening to this conversation, and then a Darshana Patri was possessed by this Daiva, and this Daiva was a female deity, so he speaks like a woman. And he says, "This tree, it's very dear to me. I won't allow you to chop it down." So one set of the villagers are very happy, but the other set is very, उनके चेहरे पे आ गया था वो निराशा. But then suddenly the Daiva this person turns around and but don't be nirash. We have to progress with time, and I understand your pain. So what I'm going to suggest is a solution which will help all of you. And what was that? So the branches of the tree were very big, wide, and trim off those branches. Let the road be whatever road or whatever they want to construct it so that everybody can live peacefully.
Win-win for everyone.
Also be there. And further, if something happens, then you should approach the right people. So I think the solutions are very practical.
Yes.
Like there was this another couple, childless couple. Same, they were not having any child for a long time. What do we do? And then the Daiva comes and says, you take this prasada, just apply it on your forehead, pray to me whenever or whatever, जो भी है. and next year you'll have a child this year. Okay, we do not even take any stress. I'll take care of everything. You just go home, apply the prasada on your this thing, and then I don't know if it was a prasada or I didn't, because again the Tulu is very different. It's an archaic form of Tulu, and you have a mediator who kind of
Got it. Okay.
interprets and translates. So this family is like they took this thing and they went, and they had a child that year. Now, so this kind of thing happens even in Kerala, and it's connected to the Nagas, the Sarpas and the Nagas. You go to the temples of these Nagas, and there you take this solemn vow or something like that, like a mannat. And so again, if you want to look at it rationally, I think it's just you get hope, and that hope kind of, look at the words used. Do not take any stress. Because half of the people these days, my generation, your generation, it's just the stress which kind of kills a lot of things. So
True.
maybe it's a hope, or maybe there was a power which we cannot explain. Again, it's a leap of faith. Either you take that leap or you stay here.
Understand. But now, say for example, if it's me, a person like me, and if I basically get voluntarily possessed and I'm performing the Kola or whatever, then the next time, is it like that only a specific community or whatever, a specific type of people are the ones who...
Kola, it's always this particular community
Okay.
of, if it's, so even in Kola, I mean in Daiva rather, there are two types of possessions. There are two types of people who get possessed. One is the Kola Kattunakul, or the Kola artist. Kattunakul is the one who dresses up as the spirit deity. उसमें पूरा dressing up होता है, the facial makeup and everything. Then there is also the Darshana Patri. So this possession, it's called, the Darshana is like you get the Darshana of the spirit deity. So Darshana Patri is Patra, like character, the artist.
Got it.
Okay, so Darshana Patri doesn't have the facial makeup or anything, but they'll wear the silk attire, and they also get possessed by the spirit deity, and they also give you like oracular prophecies and all. Similar thing happens in Kerala. There it's called a Velichapada. If you remember in the beginning of the book, I mentioned an oracle. So oracle is not your somebody sitting in an urban home, with the chakras and spirit. No, that's not the oracle I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the oracle in Matrix as well. Okay, this is not Neo we are looking at, but I'm talking about Velichapada. So in the book, in the beginning, I talk about an oracle grabbing my hand and telling me that I'm going to have something to do with the undead, my profession. So that was a Velichapada. Very interesting. Again, very similar attire, red silk attire, gets voluntarily possessed, tells future, or I mean, not future exactly, but gives prophecies and even solves disputes at times. So very interesting, similar concept.
How long ago was this? When
This was 6 or 7 years ago.
is it even like
It was
before
the
you
time when I
started?
was switching my career, because I'm an IT guy. I was an IT guy, not anymore. I have completely disconnected into a different personality. And now.
So that's the time this thing happened.
This was the time, because that was the time when I got the first offer to write a movie. Again, it was not my story. It was somebody else's story. I had to write the screenplay. And I had written one book, but writing was not my full-time job or anything. It was just a passion. And it was at this time when my mother was very worried. Naturally, only son, and simple middle-class family. Obviously, she got to worry, and she was visiting astrologers and she was visiting temples, taking me to temples. कि अगर इसकी बुद्धि भ्रष्ट हुई है, तो please इसको वापस normal बना दो. So this happened at one of those temple visits, temple runs, you can say.
Understood,
And coincidentally, one of the astrologers whom my mother had visited, I don't know which astrologer and all, but not one of them, many of them, they had also suggested that there's some connection with the Naga, That or the Daiva, that there's some mother goddess that my ancestors used to worship, because my ancestors came from the Tulu region.
Of course.
They migrated to Kerala,
Right.
like 5 generations back. But we retained our mother tongue. We speak Tulu. But we did not retain this. Somewhere, these Daivas and the Nagas, whom my ancestors worshipped, venerated, they were lost. So few of the astrologers, they maintained this, that whatever is happening to him is because these ancestors, these spirit deities, they are trying to lure him back.
Understood.
So that they are venerated.
Right.
So that they are worshipped.
Got it.
And so interestingly, the writer in me got very excited. So there's this play of destiny, and you're going back to your ancestors. So I even tried. I tried tracing back my ancestry and everything, where they might have lived. What is that? So we have Nagabanas. So that's a serpent grove. It's inside. It's usually inside these forest-like areas, and have this stone Naga idols, and it's. We, especially in the Tulu region and in Kerala, we consider these Nagas to be the visible gods.
Okay.
Because you can see the serpents, right? Unlike your other, like a Shiva or a Vishnu, you cannot see them. Like you said, can we prove it? No, right? Because you can't see them. But the Nagas, you can see them. Even Daivas, when they are in the body of the person, you can see them. Right? So it's very interesting that way.
I understand.
Right? Especially Nagas, because Nagas, though, they appear as cobras. So, so Nagas are cobras.
What is the, I'm sure that because you said that you were living like almost there for a couple of months and 2-3 months when you were doing this, especially in terms of the research, what is you must have had like some experiences which must have been unexplainable. And I don't mean like when you're viewing Kolas, otherwise. What happened?
So I had one of the experiences that I had. It's mentioned in the book. I'm sure you're picking up this question from there. I was staying at my spouse's ancestral home, and one night I have this. That's the first time. I'd not been there for a lot. This was like long back, for 3 or 4 years back, during the lockdown. It's been 4 years, right? Hold on. Okay. So that was a nightmare. So I had a nightmare during that nightmarish time, and in the nightmare, in this dream, nightmare, whatever you want to call it, I saw this hand. Just a hand, and again a dream. Okay, we spoke about dreams a few minutes back. So in the dream, I was at the same place. I'm waking up at the same place, and I'm seeing this hand, and it's pointing towards a particular direction. I ignored it. It's just a dream. The next day, I just told somebody that I had a dream. I saw this. There was a hand that was pointing towards that side. But I think in the rural parts, people are more interested to know these little details about the things that we ignore in our urban hustle and bustle. So they were very interested. They started asking me questions, and they started digging up details which even I didn't remember. To be honest, I just remember the hand, but because this conversation happened, I started rewinding, because you don't recollect a lot from your dreams.
Absolutely,
You just remember the last few seconds.
Right.
So I told them, oh, this is what it is. I was here in this very room, and I was walking, and then I saw this hand. There was fire, red kind of colored fire all around. And that direction. Okay. So there is the Jag, the Daiva, Chamundi.
Okay.
Okay, who is present in that direction. If you follow that path, then you will reach there. And apparently, I had not paid my respects to the deity. That's the first time I was coming there. So I had come there a few times before, but that was like for a day. I'd come and then leave. But I was staying there for the first time.
Right.
So then I ignored it. We had some function. The function was over, and again I was staying there for another night. And something happened that night. I suddenly woke up and I wasn't able to, move around. It could have been sleep paralysis, but the reason why I rule out that is because usually when you have a bout of sleep paralysis, you feel like somebody is on top of you. Okay, and there are people, at least according to reports, that people see, those who hallucinate, they see someone sitting on top of your chest,
Right.
or in front of you. My case was very different. I was feeling that somebody was standing behind me. So that's why I kind of rule out, no, it cannot be sleep paralysis, because I never had it before. And secondly, I should have felt that in front of me or on my chest. But I felt this weird presence right behind me, and it scared me to the core. Usually I'm not scared, because I am a writer of horror. I love finding, I have a different kind of craze for all these occult and everything. But that night I was so scared, I couldn't turn around. And it was not because I had a weight on my chest, no. It was just that something was stopping me. There were a lot of guests that day. So we had a lot of people around in that room. Everybody was sleeping. My wife was also near me, her father, mother. But I couldn't gather that courage. I just prayed at that moment. I said, God, if it's Chamundi or, I don't know what it is, but if it is that, then please forgive me. I'm going to come tomorrow. Just let me sleep. Or just give me a sign that everything will be okay.
Right.
And the very next moment, I closed my eyes. I hear some rustling near my, I felt that something brushed by my feet. And then I opened my eyes and I see this, near my feet there was the window, wooden window. And at the wooden window, there was this cat, a black cat.
Wow.
And it was looking at me, and I felt very, I don't know, it was very reassuring. So the next day, and then after that I slept. I didn't feel like anything was behind me. Okay. Then the next day, I talked about this particular encounter with the supernatural or spiritual. Or I just told them, man, this is what has happened, and there's this black cat. There's no black cat here. We have cats, but it's black and white, or an orange one. There's a ginger, but there is no black cat. So then they said, black cat could be, it could be related to Chamundi, because the mother goddesses, they. So we have this thing, like if it's a Kali Billi, then it's going to bring bad luck and all that. That's a very colonial European concept. It's not really Indian concept.
Oh, is it? Okay.
More about it another this thing. But at least in our part of the country, we believe that because see, the thing is that the cats could be the form or the favorites of the mother goddesses. You look at Durga. What's her Vahan?
I'm trying to recreate. Oh, tiger.
Big cat? Sherawali? Okay. So the cat, the big cat, that family is associated with the mother goddesses. Why? Because if you look at cats, the mothers, they're very possessive about their children. So maybe that's why there's this connection with the mother goddesses. So there again, they were all like, okay, if it's a cat, then it has to be something with the Chamundi. Don't you just go and, pay your respects. So I did that. And after that, I never had any problem there. In fact, I stayed in that very house for some time while researching for this book. No issues at all. Because I always make sure that I go there every time. Even if nobody else goes there, I go there and pay my respects. And there are a lot of rules for that particular. It's a very scary place. When it's like there are just 5 houses in that region. And this Tana of Chamundi, it's like after all this, when you have to pass all these houses, and then there is this forest-like place, and it's inside that you have this Thana, a very small, old structure, and you have the stone, which is your Chamundi, locked inside. And so yeah, I go there. So nobody goes there after 5 o'clock in the evening. Even I am advised not to go there after 5 o'clock.
from the wanting of that there is a possibility of a possession, or you might have some.
I don't know. They just say don't go there. I've tried to ask, but nobody tells me why. But maybe some legend associated with that particular that particular place. Maybe I don't know. Because these stories can change from place to place, right? A Chamundi from another region could have a different story, right? Maybe some incident which happened in the past must have, when they don't know why, you know.
Right.
So this happened with me, which was very scary for me.
This, there's a mention here as well in terms of like the thought process is very primitive of figuring out whether after death there is there is spirit, whether you go into spirit world as well. So allow me to just kind of give you the context of where I'm actually asking this question from, because it came to my mind from that perspective where you're mentioning that if you were told that okay, maybe after 5 o'clock don't go here because there is a possibility of something happening. That's just a belief. So then is there also a general popular belief like that where like they say that okay, शाम को रात को whatever आप शमशान मत जाइए या whatever कब्रिस्तान मत जाइए, because it's a place where a lot of people have been buried and things like that. So then there is a lot of possibility of a lot of these spirits being around and then something can happen.
That is the belief. See, why do we get these thoughts? First thing, because we don't know what happens after death. That's a simple question which haunts us. Nothing else haunts us. It's this one question: what happens after death? Even the religious gurus, the religions, whatever beliefs, nobody can prove whatever they have mentioned is true or not. Okay, so maybe somebody in the past must have associated with somebody dies, उसको आप जला देते हो शमशान घाट में, or if you bury them in a kabristan. Belief is it is possible that the person is haunting around as a restless spirit because of some kind of attachment with the material life, or because of some unfulfilled desire. So it's a very natural thing to it's a very natural thought, especially for the person or the family to which the person belonged. Because you are attached to that person, and suddenly that person, it's actually the other way. It's not the person's spirit which is attached to the family, it's the family that is still attached to the person, and they must be thinking that, maybe, So that's one way of putting it. Then the other thing is, because we don't know the unknown, we start thinking, maybe this is what happens. It's all theories. Darkness, again. In the olden times, we didn't have light. That's why we have this natural fear for the dark. We didn't have torches, we didn't have mashals the time before that. So it's somewhere embedded in our DNA to fear the dark. So maybe it's all connected at that primordial level. So that's why even that line which I've mentioned in the book, for a modern, urban, rational person, this is all that there is. After this, there is nothing.
Right.
Or nothing is again black. Right. It's a very simple way of, like I said, that's the best way to, that's the most simplest way to live. You're not worried about what's going to happen after this life. But isn't that very primitive? Simple is primitive, right? There is a lot more to explore, but then more you explore, the more questions that will bombard on you. Or you can follow some guru and try to follow that path, but there again, they'll tell you, don't question what the guru says. See, that's the problem. If it's a religion, again, don't question that religion. Because these questions will keep coming. So whatever path you choose, whether it's a rational or the atheistic path, again, don't question it. You believe it. If it's a particular religion, believe it. That's fine. But if you want to explore, then there's a whole range of questions. It's not even a spectrum. It's beyond our understanding.
But can those questions really be answered also?
No. Because again, like I said in the beginning, even if we think that this is illusion, then is this illusion real? Dvaitha and Advaitha, they lock horns like anything. In the past, there were wars. I mean, not wars exactly, but
Right.
debates.
Hmm.
So, again, if you want to follow something, you start from the very basic level, which is this, that this is the world, nothing else exists, and then slowly and slowly take your next step
But
without losing your mind.
right. No, but then stories like this, say for example, now this is again like coming to like a little bit of the folklore that you mentioned earlier, and also like a little bit of practical me, which is trying to understand what is the situation or what the scenario could possibly be. Now, haunted places like what they talk about, like Bandhavgarh Fort, Bhangarh. I'm sorry, yeah. So it's supposed to be the most haunted place
in India.
I do not know.
Yeah.
I've like researched it. I've tried. I don't know whether it actually is the situation or is not. But there has to be some truth to some story somewhere in there.
You don't know. Even see, it's one thing that I know is that Bhangarh, you are not allowed to be there after sunset. There is some notice that's mentioned.
Right.
It's put up there by the ASI or something. No, we don't know if it's the spirits or if it's some people. It could be people, antisocial elements, trying to scare away people.
Yeah, because they say that there are a lot of suicides which have happened over there.
I've heard of that.
Right.
I've heard. I think it was in one of the podcasts only where we spoke about this. But again, was it motivated by supernatural or the natural?
Okay, fair. Yeah.
Right. We don't know. And if something happens, then there are people to just take it to another level. It's very difficult to answer this kind of a question. I've heard of these paranormal investigators who have gone to investigate. I don't know. They say they found some energies and all those things. But again, how much can you trust those devices that you've taken? Is it even scientific? So you need, if at all you want to prove something that is beyond our recognition or our perception, then you need to prove it in a scientific manner.
Absolutely. Yes.
And paranormal may not always be scientific.
But I don't think it's ever scientific. Can paranormal be scientific?
I'm not going to talk about this, to be honest, because obviously I have a lot of friends in that field.
Okay.
But again, I would rather believe a scientist.
Okay.
Right? Paranormal, it's their passion. But how much of that passion, how much of that findings that they have or the theories they have is clouded by passion is something I cannot, vouch for.
Right.
Because you kind of get clouded by passion. I try to keep a disconnect. So even if I believe in Daiva, I won't tell you come believe in Daiva.
Of course.
Right. I'll just tell you what is fact, what is observed.
Right.
Rest is up to you.
Of course.
Right. But then there are people who try to push that, whatever is there. So I think that's where I like to keep myself, distance myself. But again, if you can prove something in a controlled environment, like there was this experiment long back, and it's mentioned in the book as well.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking
21 grams.
Yes.
There was a movie
in fact,
as
that's the next question I wanted to actually
I'm
ask.
glad that we came to the same question. 21 grams. So this American scientist, the researcher, he wanted to prove about the existence of afterlife, of the soul.
Soul, right.
The thing that we call Atma.
Yes.
Right. Again, Atma is an urja or an energy when you look from this spiritual or
Absolutely.
the Advaitic side.
Right.
The other one, it's very different. The Atma is the real person itself. Anyway, that's not the topic of our discussion. Coming back to this. So this scientist, he performs his experiments, and what he does is, at the deathbed, he had a few patients who were on their deathbed, and moments before death, he measured their weights. I think 5 or 6 patients, not more than that. And at the moment of death, he measured their weights, and after their death, he measured their weights. The common conclusion which came was that the weights reduced by 21 grams approximately. And that's the average which he took. So now he went on to say that there is something in the body which departs, and that weighs 21 grams.
Right.
Now that which departs,
Hmm.
which existed, come back to our Indian languages,
Hmm.
something that existed, bhoot, bhootkal, the kal, the past, the tense that existed, the time that existed. Similarly, this guy is saying this 21 grams ka something is there which is departing the body, and that is the Atma or the spirit or the soul. So when you say spirit, there is a different spirit in a Christian sense, but I'm not talking about that spirit. I'm talking about this Atma wala,
Right.
the common understanding of the spirit.
Right.
It's a very theological thing which I'm not an expert of.
Hmm.
So, but then later on, the scientists they came together and they started, okay, what is it? They were very excited. 21 grams. So they kind of busted this theory and they said that it's air which is escaping the body.
Right.
At the time of death, air escapes the lungs. There's some air in the lungs which escapes. There are some sweat and all which escapes the body. So that's the 21 grams which is leaving the body.
Yeah, but deduction and scientifically as well, it's also, I mean, I also find that theory a little bit weird. The reason is because traditionally, if you actually have ever and I mean, I hope touch wood that nobody ever has to be in such positions where you have to help somebody medically and you have to like rush them to the hospital and stuff like that.
Right.
When things like this happen and if they depart, like whether you're on the way, then the body gets heavier.
Okay.
Yeah, it's never whatever in a situation where actually it becomes lighter by whatever the grams have been. And the scientific deduction for that is because the energy from the muscles goes, so they become stiff, which is the reason why you're not able to lift them. Like, for example, if you even ask like people who, soldiers as well for that matter, if they ever carried somebody on their back who's injured and if something has happened, unfortunately, it's difficult to just still have them
This is
on
not
the
at the
shoulder.
time of death, right? It's before.
No, if they are to pass at the time when you are basically moving them.
Okay.
So say for example, if you and I are sitting over here today, suddenly I have to, I need medical intervention and you have to like carry me and we have to go to the hospital. Okay. So at the time, if you carry me now, it's easy because it's going to be possible. But as life starts going, and if on the way, if I pass, if I pass and if I move to the next life, then lifting me up also is going to be difficult. I've been in that situation.
Okay.
And it is difficult. I mean, it's really like people who are really fragile, frail, they suddenly become like heavy. And you actually feel, okay, yeah, this is not a situation. I mean, how? I was able to lift and I was just able to take. And now suddenly this is like seeming like such an uphill task.
But is this for applicable only for people who are being carried or who are at rest?
No, I'm saying carried wise. At rest.
I had no idea about this.
Yes, yeah. And the scientific deduction for that is purely.
You mentioned,
Yeah,
it's because that's scientifically proven.
Right.
There's an explanation. Again, for the air leaving the lungs, there's an explanation.
Right.
So there you don't have to take a leap of faith. You have a proof. You have a valid explanation. It's where there's an absence of an explanation where you either reject it or you take a leap of faith and accept it. And interestingly, for this whole 21 grams wala theory, now I think there's another study which says that the weight that leaves the body is around 0.000 some milligrams. And I'm not very sure what exactly it is, but I heard about it somewhere. And interestingly, in some scriptures it is mentioned that the Atma, so we have different elements, like you have the water, you've got everything, the Panchabhutas.
Yes.
The Atma consists of only two elements, the Akash, which is ether, and Vayu, which is air. So, I don't know, I mean, it's a very interesting comparison. Because this American scientist is trying to prove something some few decades back. He says that it's something leaves the body which is bringing down the weight, and then there is another set of scientists who are saying it's just the air and some kind of mass or moisture which is leaving. And here, our scriptures, they are saying that soul is ether and air. Interesting. I mean, it's up to whoever wants to research, they can do the research, but I felt this is an interesting comparison. So, is the Atma that our ancestors, which they documented they mentioned in the scriptures, is it the same as the Atma which is leaving the body? I don't know. Because it's a very interesting concept. That Atma is only ether and Vayu or air.
Right.
And something is leaving. Maybe they were very intelligent, and which they were, obviously.
But
Or maybe there was a lot of study and then the world ended, and when we restarted, we lost everything, and now we are trying to understand, okay, what happened exactly?
But okay, you know what? So, I mean, this is a layered question because what you said just got me thinking into something completely very, very interesting. It's a little layered, I'll tell you. I mean, I feel it's layered, and I'll tell you why. At one aspect or one generation of where we are today, the generation is moving towards a very practical sort of a environment. Right. Everybody is very practical. The new generation, I think they probably like stop believing things as time goes because everything is about what's happening now, what's happening and stuff like that. So from that perspective, one, do you think like, what do you call from a heritage perspective, people will kind of forget what stories like these, folklores like these and things like this, which is going to happen, will they even be there? And on the other end, do you think that the people who were in the past, like in terms of the generations, like you mentioned how they were earlier, they were far more self-aware of what was happening around them, apart from their own existence in that respect, is why they were like this?
So again, back then they didn't have phones, they didn't have social media, right? For entertainment, they were dependent on the stories that their grandparents told or grandmothers told, right? So there was this way to pass on our heritage, our folk tales. Now, obviously, those who read, they get to know it. Or those who follow channels or videos on Instagram or on YouTube, which talks about mythology or folklore, they are able to follow it. Otherwise, again, maybe something is getting lost, right? But I think there has to be some kind of an effort, maybe maybe in schools, maybe at least you don't have to believe in mythology again, in a religion, but you should know the stories is what I always feel. Because it opens up a lot of things for you. A very simple example is when I was growing up, my friends, they were not big fans of your Puranas, mythology. But my mother used to read me stories, so my dadi used to tell me stories of the folklores, which were somehow inspired from the Puranas itself. So I was always interested. Okay, and I'm not talking about the serials that you watch,
right?
Because there's a lot of mirchi masala going on there. It's fine. But I'm talking about the written Puranas, the one which you know, the mota books and all. I was very interested in that. But everybody was not. But suddenly, I think it was, suddenly there was this book which came out when I was, I think, 8 or 9, and everybody was running after it. It's called Harry Potter. I'm not saying Harry Potter, I mean, it's our Puranas are fiction. I'm just saying that the interest that Harry Potter, you know,
in a very relatable manner.
If we do something like that, I think that's what Amish has done in a way. Akshat is doing that in a way. I think that's what we also have to do. We have to bring our mythological stories in a very, I think even Om Rao tried that, but didn't really work well. But we have to bring it to our next generation, the youngsters.
But then
you don't have to adhere to a faith.
You
just watch it like a story. You just watch it, read it. You get to know about our past.
Yeah, but how? Okay, this could be like a little controversial, and again, I don't mean to hurt any religious sentiments when I ask this question. Do you feel Puranas, right? They could also be possibly a version of a story which was at that point of time written by some writers?
Veda Vyasa is the writer.
Right. True. But it is supposed to be, and I'm sure there has to be some certain factual data to it. But then, at the end of the day, it is still like a rendition of some fictional thing that he's.
So I was there. I was attending this writers retreat, and that the topic was on the role of women in Indian mythology.
Okay.
So basically, it was all mythology writers and scholars, and some of them, they believe that it's our itihas, that it's our history.
Right.
And then there were some who didn't believe that it is it's just stories. Okay. So one of the groups, I'm not going to take names, you could easily deduce which group it was. They believed that it was all some story which happened to some king. I'm just talking about one of the epics. I'm not going to name the epic.
Right.
And then over time, it was written and rewritten and polished. And as you go from one region to another, something else was added, and from one era to another. As we made transition from to the medieval era, some other changes when some conquests were happening. So some other changes were brought in to bring these values in the society. So that's the opinion of the scholars. Okay, so if you want to believe that, fine. But the thing is, the way I have been brought up, I'm talking about myself now.
Of course.
My parents, they believe, especially my mother, she believes that gods exist. So if I tell this to her, she would never accept it. But luckily, I have an open mind. My belief is personal, and I do believe in some existences, but I'm not going to impose it on another person. But I would definitely like to tell those stories for sure. Then it's up to you whether you want to take it as a story. Fine, take it as a story. But if you want to, maybe my writing is so good that you start believing that the protagonist of my story is actual God, even better. Then you can join my cult.
No, so I mean, like as I said in the beginning as well, like for me as well, I mean, of course, I do definitely believe that there is a divine power.
See, there is a divine power. So is it a spiritual power? Is it a universal consciousness? Or if it's a multiverse, then it's a different level of consciousness. Is it one conscience which is controlling all the multiverses, or are there multiple consciousnesses? Then it goes on. If we have a debate, then it will go on. And we won't even come to a conclusion once we worship.
Right. Great. Thank you so much, Hari, for this very interesting conversation. I think there was so much that we actually spoke about, so many things are uncovered, and also from a lot of that conversation, there are so many more things that are actually coming to my mind.
It's almost a 3-hour film.
Yeah. So anyways, but we'll keep that for some other day, because those are, I think, topics which we can actually discuss.
I think you already have your longest episode. so I think, but yeah, there are a lot of things which we can speak about, but this is just the tip. Even Daiva, the book, it's just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
You have those who want to know more, they should go there, witness it, and even try to read the works of scholars, and even those that are written in the local language, in the regional language.
Right.
No, just even if you talk to people. So that's what I keep telling somebody. This is not your answer to all questions. This is just the first question, or at least something that's going to tinkle the first question.
It sparks the curiosity.
Yeah, it's just that. It's just the tip of the iceberg. You go to the people there, they'll tell you 100 more stories which you might not even imagine.
Right.
And you go to another village or another town, or maybe in the city of Bangalore, there must be some other deity. You go there, they'll tell you 100 more stories. So that's why I said this is just the tip of the iceberg. Maybe the tip of the tip.
Great. Thank you so much. I hope you had a good conversation and enjoyed.
I enjoyed it.
It was great.
Yeah.
And we'll see you in the next one for sure. Thank you.